So we want to talk to you about what's going on in California. We just had an election. Some people were surprised by the outcome of election. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I, for one, was not actually that surprised. A few weeks prior to the election, some of my Democratic colleagues, we were in San Francisco in an event, and we were talking about the elections just at a luncheon together, and it was just us members. And I think one of our bigger issues that we found out within the state is people don't really care about how you identify and these social issues when they can't afford to put food on the plate, when cost of living is what it is in the state of California. And I think President Trump, for good, bad, or indifferent, really tapped into that sentiment. And it was not a surprise for us at all that he won the Electoral College in the numbers that he did, and then also won the popular vote in the country. And I think a lot of issues right now are really breadbasket issues for Californians. When you want to talk electric vehicles and all these other things, like those are great conversations to have, but if you can't afford to put food on the table and have your family safe, then it's a whole different conversation. And I think, some of my Democratic colleagues weren't ready to kind of admit that just yet. But it's been a lot of fun having conversations with them after the fact where they are not upset necessarily. I mean, they don't particularly love Trump, but they're also being very introspective. Like, what did we miss? Like, how did we miss this? And I think it's a really good conversation for people to have.
Now, how does it look like when you're talking to your colleagues? Is now cost of living and these issues are on the forefront? Are they considered more important than social issues?
I would say for the electeds, yes. The colleagues that I've talked to, absolutely. The governor seems to be going in a little bit different direction. Right after the election, clearly the country, California, Trump, I think he's at 38% in California, which is significantly higher than his last election here. At some point, you have to go back to the basics. And so when I talk to my colleagues about that, they're very open to that, and they understand that now. Like, in a lot of ways, California spoke. I mean, if you look at the map of how California voted, right, it overwhelmingly went red, except the coastal areas. Those still remain blue. Prop 36 passed in all counties across the state. It didn't lose one county. It passed by over 70%. And so if we don't stay focused on what voters actually care about, it's going to be a problem for either party if they choose not to listen to the voters.
And what are these social issues that the focus have been on, and what are the issues that the legislature has been kind of not paying enough attention to?
The transgender issues were something that I think we focused a little bit too much on. I'm not saying those issues aren't important, and certainly probably not a conversation that we really want to get into here. But I think when you start talking about those issues, right, and lose sight of what is important to constituents, look, and then I go back to Prop 36. Prop 36 passed by 70% when the governor wasn't necessarily actively working against it, but certainly was not supporting it. Voters had enough. And people don't care how you identify if you can't be safe, if you can't put food on the table. And I think that's one thing that if there's anything that we take from this election, most families across the state of California are not talking about transgender issues, right? They're talking about how they're going to pay their bills. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that. We find the shiny object, and then we lose sight of what's actually important for voters.
Now, based on what you're hearing and your discussions, where do you think the state is headed? Where are the policies going to go from here?
It's going to be real interesting. Obviously, we all got sworn in a couple days ago. I'm excited about the new class of colleagues. It's funny. There's only, 5 of us that since 2016 they're here. So I'm like the old guy now, which is weird. I'm like the old curmudgeon. It's funny. Like, we're going in our 9th year. So there's a lot of new colleagues here, and it's going to be interesting to see that direction that they go. Right after the election, Governor Newsom kind of doubled down on some of these policies that I feel we're not resonating with Californians. Talking to my Democratic colleagues, I really hope that they stay focused on those kitchen table issues. And I think they will. I think the building has moderated just a little bit. We've kind of come back to the center, and so I'm hopeful. But when you talk about issues, if it is not cost of living, homelessness, public safety, I think we're losing the narrative. I think those are all mistakes. We stay focused on those issues.
What do you hear that you say that the building has become more moderate? How did you get to that conclusion?
Just the candidates that won. You have within, both of our parties, right? You have people that are more extreme on one way or the other. The candidates that won on the Democratic side, in my opinion, just my opinion as Heath Flora, seem to be the more moderate candidates from their districts. Candidates that the business community worked with to help them get elected. Candidates that we can work with across in a bipartisan way. And that makes me excited. When either party has ultimate control, it's a problem for anybody. And I don't care if you're Republican and or Democrat. You need debate. General Patton has one of the greatest quotes of all time, and I love it. You know, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody's not thinking. And a lot of times when you have a supermajority, just everybody just kind of falls in line to whatever the governor's wanting to do. And so I've really been encouraging over last year, and certainly going into this year, we are a co-equal branch of government. My job is to not elect, but represent 500,000 constituents. We all are, right? We were elected to represent them. They're not all Republicans. They're not all Democrats, right? So my job is to make sure that their issues and their interests are being voiced, even if it's against what the governor wants to do. And I think the constituents in some of my Democratic colleagues' seats are making those voices heard, and hopefully we can kind of push back, because the electric vehicle, issue that he's, all these tax rebates for electric vehicles, right? If Trump goes away with that, and Gavin's going to double down on it, but he excludes Tesla. Well, that just is lame. It's like, if you want electric vehicles, like, why do you care which one constituents buy? It's a political ideology at that point, because he doesn't like Musk. So I think there's a lot of those conversations that you get too far in the weeds and constituents don't.